Hey everyone, it's Jen.
And this is Lindsay.
And this is Corpus Delicti podcast. Welcome back.
Yeah, we are still going strong with our missing series. We do have a story tonight that, just to give you a heads up, it's not super long, but it is an important story to tell, as so many are. And, we're just kind of to the point where we're like, just because there's not a ton of info, do you just not talk about it, And we feel like these stories are still really worthy. But before we jump into this episode, we do have a few updates, announcements, housekeeping things.
The first announcement that we are super excited about, we are going to be in Atlanta for a podcast live event. That's going to be December 3rd. Woo. So we would love for everyone to come and join us. We're going to be on a panel with some really amazing podcasters, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, so the link will be in the show notes. It has been for the past few episodes, but just some names to kind of throw out there, because I'm sure y'all know a lot of them. Already Gone, Crimelines, Defense Diaries, Music City 911, Murder, She Told, our true crime podcast, Santa May Be a Criminal. Oh my gosh, I'm missing some, and I hate that. But there's about 12 of us that are doing this, and it's going to be split into separate panels. There will be stories, true crime cases and stories. There will be question and answer. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's December 3rd. I believe it starts at 7, but don't hold me to that because now I'm on the spot and I'm going to get it wrong. But we'll put all the details in the show notes. Second update. We had said that we were going to start doing breaks in between our series so that they're almost kind of more like seasons, so that we could stay on top of our planning and stuff like that. We are coming somewhat to the end of this series, so we will have a break coming up. Also, a little bit of bad news. Jen has to have surgery at some point soon. If you want, so we're kind of trying to rope it in with that as well.
So it's not life-threatening surgery. It is, and it's definitely not cosmetic surgery. So please don't think that. I should have gotten my knee scoped a long time ago. I didn't. I kept running marathons. I kept running. Unfortunately, it has caught up to my knee. So they're going to have to do like a little bit of a realignment and some scoping to it. So I got to actually call tomorrow to the orthopedic and figure that part out.
So so we're trying to get it all roped together. More details to come. We do have some more episodes in this series, but just know that a chunk of December, if not all of December, we will be off because we are going to be in Atlanta. We've got this going on with Jen's knee. We've got the holidays and all that. So this will be our mid-season break, and it's just kind of more of like a season approach now.
So, as Lindsay alluded to earlier, in the United States this month, it is Indigenous People Heritage Month, and a lot of their stories don't get told. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about a glaring problem here in the U.S., and we are seeing it in several other countries. I know Canada. One of the examples that we wanted to bring to your attention was an article in KTV B7. And it stated as of September 2021, there are over 5,700 unsolved missing Indigenous people cases nationally. When compared to the amount of Indigenous people in the population, this statistic is higher than the others. Also, according to the Washington State Patrol, Native Americans make up about 2% of the state's population, but accounting for nearly 6% of active missing people reports.
So additionally, a 2019 federal study found that Native American women are murdered at rates greater than 10 times the national average. And there has also been a severe lack of reporting. So what little data we do have is based on very limited information. So aside from not having accurate data, cases might actually be much higher. And one of the reasons for this, they think, is to race often being misidentified with Indigenous people. So why is all this? Why are these numbers that we do have the way that they are? Why does there seem to be such a problem with Indigenous women going missing or getting murdered. So in that same KTVB7 article, the director of social change for the Idaho Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence explained that Indigenous women have been viewed as outside of the American legal system for centuries. The second reason is radicalized stereotypes. It also explained that there is a lack of communication between law enforcement agencies on and off of reservations, and this ultimately leads to many of these cases falling through the cracks, aka there's jurisdictional confusion, there's who gets what, who's in charge of what, assuming someone else already handled something when it may not have actually happened. So knowing those statistics and knowing that it is a problem in the United States and elsewhere, we are going to talk about the case of Daisy Mae Heath.
Daisy Mae Heath was born January 10, 1958. She is the sixth daughter of her parents, Edred Heath and Nancy Whitefoot. They are members of the Confederated Tribes and Banks of Yakima Nation. Daisy was originally born Daisy Mae Tallman. Tallman was her mother's maiden name, but she later started the process to change her name. So she would often be referred to as Daisy Heath. The family lived on a ranch in Medicine Valley near the foothills of the Cascades of White Swan, Washington. This just sounds like the most gorgeous, beautiful place to live.
And they were Indigenous. They lived on tribal land on the Yakima Indian Reservation, and they had cattle, horses, gardens. They grew corn, peas, potatoes, green beans. And Daisy's older sister, Patricia, said to the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, quote, "As citizens of the Yakima Nation, our family has lived and continues our migratory way of life in the vast Columbia River Basin of the Northwest. In following the traditional ways of ancestors, we are able to sustain our livelihood where family roots are deeply embedded."
Daisy's grandparents, Elias and Lily Whitefoot, also lived on this ranch along with some other extended family members. The grandparents, along with the two oldest daughters, Patsy and Marie, helped raise the young children. So it sounds like this whole community came together and they embodied the aspect of it takes a village to raise a child. And it sounds like they were very close. They were very tight-knit. They also spent a lot of time in the mountains. They also went between White Swan and the Warm Springs Reservation in Oregon. Daisy was very hands-on when it came to helping with the gardening or farming or whatever was needed. Her family described her as fearless. She dug roots, she butchered whatever animal that needed to be hunted for food, she'd go off salmon fishing. She was self-sufficient, she was independent. Sounded like she was just rocking it.
And she would share, too. So she would gather things. She would can it up for neighbors, friends, relatives. They could always count on her to have whatever. I mean, it's very much, like you said, a community. They relied on each other, and she was a contributing member. And Daisy also had a very, very big heart. As a kid, she raised money for UNICEF, and she was very involved with her nieces and nephews, and she would cheer them on with whatever they did. They really supported each other when it came to raising families. So we know that Daisy's grandparents and her older sisters helped raise her as one of the younger ones. So Daisy, in turn, helped raise her nieces and nephews. So again, it's that tight-knit, very close bond. Family is everything. Also in school, Daisy played softball and basketball, and she was reportedly really good at both. She was an all-star and MVP player. And while she was good at both, she really shined bright in basketball. She was very determined. She was seen as the star of the team. And she and her sister Patsy often ended up on the same team. And even Patsy had a hard time hanging with her little sister. From an athletic standpoint, she was just good. And Daisy was also talented in painting, pipe making, and beading, and she sold some of these traditional crafts.
In 1986, when she turned 28 years old, Daisy became a mother to her daughter Sherry. Sherry was named after one of Daisy's sisters who had died when she was young. Tragically, baby Sherry passed away of SIDS, Now, this absolutely broke Daisy's heart. Then, to add to her heartbreak, her grandmother passed away the same year. Not to mention her mom also passed away a few years prior. So she's experiencing in her life right now a lot of heartbreak, a lot of loss. And that's a lot for anyone to go through. And of course, this led to grief over the next year. It was after this when Daisy began starting to process of changing her last name from Tallman to Heath. And we're not really sure of her reasoning why. It's not really well documented. But we do know is that on August 30th, 1987, nobody had heard from Daisy. Now, at first, it wasn't actually too weird. Daisy did do this sometimes for a few days or weeks. As we know, they did spend a lot of time in the mountains and going to other reservations or other family. They're just trying to figure it out. Did she go off? Is she just in the mountains processing, dealing with grief?
So at this time, in August of 87, Daisy was living with her sister Patsy because we know she was helping with Patsy's kids. And like Jen said, Daisy's very experienced. So they're like, maybe she just needed some time away. She can handle herself. She knows what she's doing out there. So they're like, just give her some time, let her clear her head. And Patsy said, quote, I just thought, well, she might be in the mountains because it was toward the end of summer, because it was still time for picking, or she could have gone hunting, end quote. But as time went on, it became much more abnormal. So for one, her family said that she had been, as we know, emotionally fragile. And beyond that, it's now been almost 2 months. This is now outside of her realm of habit. It had been weeks before. I think the most that I could find was a month and a half. So now they're like, okay, something's wrong. And they're realizing before she went missing, she was grieving. She was having a really hard time. And Patsy said that she interpreted it to be Daisy was in a crisis. So Daisy was officially reported missing on October 29th, 1987.
An investigation began, but Daisy's family reports that it was definitely not very thorough or done with any sense of urgency. They were very far from being pleased with the response that they received. One said, they report it, and the most awful thing is please don't come talk to the families. There's no communication. I hope something comes of this. They need to be more compassionate. So right now we're seeing the police with kind of a delayed response. She's been gone for 2 months. So in a lot of our stories, or in the next story you'll hear, there is instant police presence with helicopters, with dogs, with horses. We saw that in our last case where the whole community came out. Here they're crying out for help and they're not really receiving. And then a break comes. But it would be the one and only clue that we will have with Daisy Tallman Heath and her story. And we're going to find out what that is when we come back. All right, guys, welcome back. Right before we left, we told you guys there was this one piece of evidence. It was a clue that would be the only information that we would get to Daisy's disappearance and in the hopes of finding her. Some of Daisy's items were found. They were able to find her keys, her backpack, and a turquoise ring. Now, this was found in Soda Springs, which is a remote area of the reservation. Now, what's important to note here is that it's a closed to non-tribal residents, unless they have permission. This is their land. This is their community. There is a guardhouse there that was used to monitor road access. When it is staffed, it's not a 24-hour policing or authoritative block. However, it was at the end of the summer. It's going into the fall, so there could have been someone there, but it would have been most likely nighttime. So naturally, this led the family to start asking questions. Could it have been an Indigenous person involved in the disappearance of Daisy? There is a campground and a trail in Soda Springs. But this is in a separate part.
Yeah, so there's kind of the public part where the trail is, but then there's also the part where you can't just go drive through it. I mean, it's blocked off. Now, what I don't know, and I tried to look up the specific spot and couldn't find anything definitive, is could someone walk around it? You can't drive through it, but could someone walk around it? That I am not entirely clear on. So as soon as this is found, the family is instantly concerned because they said Daisy always had her backpack with her. She would not have gone off without it. Keep in mind, she is very experienced. They spend a lot of time outdoors in the mountains, hiking, gathering, hunting, and this is where she kept supplies, and this is not something that she was new to. Otherwise, there was no evidence of where she may be. That was it. Now, the turquoise ring was just kind of sitting on a rock. It was a ring that her sister Patsy had given her. So why was it laying there? Keys, backpack, ring. That's it. I was curious what the weather may have been like then in Soda Springs. You know, was it freezing, raining, snowing? Could it have been something having to do with the elements? And historical reports say that the high was 91 and the low was 53. Not extremes, in other words, and the conditions were reported as fair to mostly cloudy. 91 is warm, but it's not ungodly hot, you know, and again, knowing that she was experienced and knew what she was doing, I'm sure she had water, knew where to get water. These were areas that she was familiar with. So no extreme circumstances that we were able to pinpoint.
So to make this even more disturbing, between the 80s and 90s, at least 14 other Indigenous women were murdered on this reservation. So in 20 years, 14 people. They were either unsolved or they died under mysterious circumstances. So during the same time frame, 2 women actually missing, and the one that we're talking about, Daisy, still missing. Karen Wallahy is the other missing woman, and she went missing November 7th, 1987. She and Daisy are both 29 years old. We're seeing a lot of similarities between the 2 women. In 2009, an FBI analysis was released. In it is stated that of 16 female disappearances alone in the Yakima Reservation, 10 are strongly believed or known to be homicides. In other words, these women are not just getting up and running away. In 2019, Washington State Patrol had documented 20 cases of missing Indigenous women in the same county.
So some of the other women that were found deceased and murdered were in that closed area of the reservation. So all this just paints a very terrifying picture for someone like Daisy and her family who's looking for her, because you've got decades of, you know, dozens and dozens of women disappearing, being murdered, found in this same area. And oh my gosh, they're mostly unsolved. So,
and if it had been anywhere else, New York or Atlanta, you would automatically be seeing possible serial killer ?
So on October 30th of 1997, Daisy was legally declared dead. Now, in late 2008, human remains were found in a remote area of the Yakima Reservation, and while law enforcement was initially awaiting mitochondrial DNA results, an FBI lab later determined that there was insufficient evidence to say whether or not it was Daisy, and they haven't said anything else. Now, with the statistics we've heard, unfortunately, could it be Daisy? Maybe. Could it be one of these other dozens of missing women? Potentially. So investigators are operating on the belief that Daisy was the victim of a homicide, and there are 0 suspects in the case. No one has been named.
With a victim pool this large, you would think this would be under a massive surveillance or a very heavy police presence, and we're just not seeing the help for this group like we do other cases. Daisy Mae Talman was last seen in Toppenish, Yakima County, Washington on August 30th, 1987. At the time she went missing, she was 29 years old. We don't know what she had on, but at the time of her disappearance, she was about 5'3", 5'4", and weighed approximately 140 to 185 pounds. She had this long, straight, beautiful black hair that extended down to the middle of her back. She had brown eyes, and she had a scar on her left arm and shoulder. This was a result of being hit by a vehicle when she was just a child. It had happened one morning when they were waiting for the school bus. Daisy picked up a stray puppy that followed them and took it to the house for shelter and ran back out. Now, when she ran out, the car didn't see her and hit her. Fortunately, the car was not going very fast, and Daisy was okay aside from that cut on her left arm and shoulder. This just goes to show how big her heart was. There's this stray little puppy, and she wanted to make sure that it was okay. And she risked it all, it sounds like, just to make sure this puppy was okay.
I was going to say the same thing, that it just goes to show who she was. Just this, I picture this sweet child, like, oh my gosh, we can't leave the puppy out here. So she takes it home and is like, we'll, find you a home later and feed you and all that. So currently, Daisy's case is classified as endangered missing. If alive, she would be 64 years old, so she has been missing for a long time. Her sister Patsy said to the Yakima Herald, quote, "I want to get the story of my sister out there. Other than the fact that she is missing, she was a good person. She was looked to in a very positive light by her sisters and family members and nieces and nephews she helped raise." And a family friend said, quote, "She was a good person. She was happy. She was caring. Anytime when I had a problem, I always turned to her, would ask her, what am I supposed to do?"
Another friend said, and quote, "She would always be there for us, and when she would cook for us, she'd cook for churches." Now, this is a friend who lost her husband, and Daisy came over to help with the house, and she cooked. The quote goes on to say that she was a very traditional lady. She was always willing to help, and she was quiet, but yet a lot of company. So the Yakima Herald also wrote that in Yakima tradition, people don't mention the name of someone who has died, and they don't display photos of that person for at least a year after death, unless they release themselves from mourning before that. At a year after or later, relatives hold a memorial. Though the family held a memorial for Daisy after she was declared legally dead, it wasn't the same as a traditional memorial because she hadn't come home to them, because the family's still hoping to find her.
So the color red has been adopted by advocates who are raising awareness for this decades-long crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women throughout the United States and around the world. So if you see the color red, and a lot of times you'll see the abbreviation MMIW on a red background, like a shirt or a poster or whatever, and that's what it stands for, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women. So keep an eye out for that, or that's a way that you can show support too. And if anyone has any information about Daisy Mae Heath, you can contact the Yakima Nation Tribal Police at 509-865-2933, and her case number is number 873732. And it's weird to me because I've tried to think about, why would the ring and the keys just be sitting there? The backpack I could see if you set it down because you need to use the restroom or you're gathering something, but the ring and the keys is so strange to me.
I'm wondering, was her items found near a body of water?
I don't know. I could not find the actual specific. It gave the general area, but not the specific pinpoint. So, obviously something happened to her, but what, did someone come upon her and left identifying objects behind, hoping that no one would ever find it? But then why would you leave it sitting out in the open like that? Or like you said, a body of water, was she washing her hands, took the ring off, and somebody came up behind her? I don't know.
See, I'm wondering if she just set her things down, if there's a body of water near, and I was hoping that we'd be able to find it. Could she have drowned by accident, or could she have been attacked by wildlife in that area? And because it had been such a huge time span in between the items being found and the attack, all the evidence would have been washed away anyways. You wouldn't have found her, but that many women in that such a short period of time in the same area. It sounds, to me, it just sounds like they're being hunted. They're being targeted, and it's not right by any means.
And even if it's not, and we're not saying it's like a serial killer or anything. That's not what we're saying. But it does go to show that all of these are mostly unsolved. So there is some sort of breakdown as to why they're not being looked at, why they're not being solved, why they're not being found, regardless of what's going on, whether it's they just got lost, whether it's the elements, regardless if it's a serial killer, whatever the reason is, it's not being investigated and they're not being found. And like you said, at the same rates, you know, we've talked about so many stories where they've got the bloodhounds and the helicopters and all that. And there's just
park rangers are out there. Why is this group different?
Well, and I did see too, where on reservations such as this, technically speaking, the FBI does have jurisdiction based on what I saw. So where's the FBI? Where's all that added help? I mean, that's a huge resource for, you know, a reservation experiencing something like this. If you did have the help of the FBI and there was a good communication channel and there were, you know, people on the reservation and the authorities, you know, working together to find it, but we're just not seeing that. So I think this is unfortunately a good example of a very bad problem.
Absolutely. All right, guys, don't forget, holidays are coming up. What better gift than a Corpus Delicti hoodie? Just going to throw that out there. They are awesome. I'm wearing mine now, actually. So don't forget, they're really comfortable. They're not too thick either. So, I mean, it's a light indoor jacket too for us Southerners. Go to the link to our merch store down below in the show notes. Got some really crazy and awesome merchandise. You can pick your logo. You can pick your item. It gets printed on there and shipped to you. So great Christmas present if you are just happen to be thinking of someone who loves true crime like we do.
And yeah, your sweatshirt does look adorable. Jen's is like a royal blue, and I have a matching one, and mine's navy. So you can pick what color you want it on. So yes, very good gift idea indeed. Don't forget, you can join us on Patreon, patreon.com/Corpus Delicti. You get to do the monthly live episodes with us. If you're $3 or higher, you get to join the Discord server. It's a good time. We like it. It's fun. Come join us. What else?
Don't forget to rate and review. 5 stars only accepted.
We're cutting off the rest. Disabled feature.
Yeah.
Introduce the new mascot that you have sitting there on your shoulder.
Okay. For all of our delectables, we have a brand new mascot that we have welcomed. He is Lobby the Lobster.
Is that his name? Okay, so
that's what I came up with. Like, I mean, we can call him Hermit the Lobster.
Bless it.
We should have a poll. He is super cute, but he doesn't have a name. Name our mascot. I think that'd be quite cute and fun.
So little backstory. Y'all know that we recently have switched editing software. Cuts down on time a lot, but with all new things, especially when you've been doing something for 5 years, it might come with a learning curve. And whoever does our editing, me,
Lindsay can't edit and I can't spell, so we've got YouTube issues too.
Look, it's a hot mess at Corpus Delicti headquarters. So what we did is this new editing software. It transcribes everything so that we can edit the words itself instead of the actual file, and it's just easier to see. But we said, you know, what if it doesn't transcribe properly? What if we miss some of our edits? And we said we should have a keyword. So if we mess up, we say the keyword and it can identify the keyword. Well, Jen just threw out the word lobster. So lobster is our keyword. So now if we mess up, we'll say, she was walking down the street at, oh, shoot, I messed that up, lobster. So throughout our episode, there's just a bunch of lobsters. For whatever reason, I don't know. I'm hoping that not many of y'all have noticed, but for two episodes, I've left some lobsters in. And we didn't pick up on it until Jen went to make the YouTube video. And she was listening and she's like, Lindsay, we got a runaway lobster here. And so then I had to go back and fix the episodes and repost it. And so if you guys randomly hear the word lobster, that's our
There's
gift
a reason.
to you. shouldn't be there. I missed it for whatever reason. I think I have a new process for finding them. I can do a search for specific words now. So hopefully it goes better from here on out.
And so I told my mom this story, and she and my dad just happened to go up to New Hampshire and Maine to visit family because we got a lot of family up in the New England state. And she brings me home 2 red stuffies that are lobsters. Technically, they're one for each kid, but one of them.
One for each time Lindsay screwed up and left one in an episode. So one of the first one that I left in was so abrupt. Whoever was listening to the episode, I am so sorry, because it was literally like, lobster, oh my gosh, lobster. It was like this big dramatic saying of the word lobster. It wasn't just an under the breath thing. And whoever was listening was probably like, what the heck? So that's what happened. But yeah, I had my order of operations for like 5 years. I knew exactly what to do, what buttons to hit, it just came naturally. And then I left. I forgot to cut off the music in one of them. And Jen told me about that too. So I'm sorry about that. It completely threw me off when we got the new editing software, because it is in no way the same as how I did it before at all. So I keep forgetting little things. I'm sorry, guys. I try.
But you know what? As with the lobster, we're going to say it to Felicia. Bye.
Bye.